So, information behavior. Before we start, a brief announcement, which also comes along well for the topic. We organize a autumn school for information retrieval and information foraging. And information foraging is one of the models in information behavior, but of course we take a more general approach in the autumn school or Herbstschule, which is organized by the special interest group for some 20 years. And for the last year, and this year it's the first time to be in English. This time it's quite successful already. We have a lot of participants from 15 countries who want to come to Burg Katlenburg in September. If you're interested, maybe you also want to come. Maybe not this year, it's maybe a bit too early, but if you're a master student or also PhD student, this is a target group. You are welcome to participate in this event. It will also happen the next 2 years, not in Katlenburg, but somewhere else in Germany, and that could be very interesting. What is it? It's a 1 week intensive lectures on information retrieval, on advanced topics, so experts from different fields will talk about their specialty. There's a link where you can also register, and again, next year will be a similar link, and we'll have some interesting speakers on information behavior. Our topic today, Katrina Bistro will talk, and for example, we have also the only German Salton Award winner, Professor Fuhr from Duisburg, who will also give one of the lectures. So one lecture in the morning, one lecture in the afternoon, a quite intensive program with very international audience. So if you got interested, this is maybe something you want to do in September or next year. Also will also probably be in September, October. Anyway, first we have to start with the basics before you can attend the autumn school. Information behavior. We have these standard models of information too. We haven't really talked about models so far. What we talked about were machine models. We could say they're models to talk about the matching between query and documents. Remember, geometrically inspired model is the vector space model, and whereas your network model, spreading of interest in a network, was a network-based model. And this way of talking about search gives us a hint on how to implement search, or probability-based model. Norbert Fuhr wrote very important contributions to this model. We will be at the autumn school. This is also another way to talk about search, right? There's a certain probability of a document to be a good match for a query. However, this comes along with several shortcomings. It's just a very limited way of looking at search behavior, of what really happens between users and machines. For example, it inherently has the assumption, or takes the assumption, that the information need is something static. You have your need, you enter your query, you go away. And this might not be so true. In reality, maybe through the interaction, your knowledge state changes, and you will learn more about the topic, more about your problem. You may become more aware of what you're looking for, and your query might be changed through the process. Supposing a query might be an interactive process, probably in many cases it is. You look at result documents and say, well, that's not what I wanted. I have to look for a better search term. What can I think of? Or you see in your results a few words, you say, that's really what I meant. This might be the better term. And you can change your query and maybe get better or worse results. Also, we assume that the query intent can be represented by a simple query, by a few keywords. Of course, this is also not so realistic. The few keywords that the user poses, puts and enters, are just a very brief expression of what he wants. He might not type everything that is in his head. And we know from research, one of the few questions that one of the few really hints that we can give users is type as many words as you can think of, then you will have a very high chance of getting better results. Even some synonyms and stuff. Another assumption that this model makes is that once you have a document, result documents, and you decide, I have my list, I select two, the process is over. That's also not so realistic. Users will do something with these documents. For example, the result document for navigational search is a homepage. And then you don't go away and say, now I have the URL, I'm finished. But you will engage in some interaction or information interaction with this URL, with this homepage. So the idea that I get a document and then I go away is also unrealistic. Is really the document the ultimate goal? Or am I looking for something, a text within the document? Or am I looking for several documents, right? I might have different types of needs that would require different types of behavior on the side of the search engine. And currently search engines give back always the same kind of result. A list of documents, right? No matter whether you search for a navigational search or whatever, and that might also not be so realistic and so user-friendly. Actually saying that, it's not completely true. In the last years there have been a few changes where search engines changed their type of query presentation in the results based on the assumption about the information. They look at the query basically automatically and say, this is a query of type X. And then now I present the results in a bit different way. For example, anybody ever was surprised by the type of, or observed a different kind of result presentation? You never had such a query then, except for you, just a second, or you didn't notice, which could be a good sign that you don't even notice, right? But
by Google Maps or famous people or universities also.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly. For maps, for example, very good example you get, or what kind of query do you enter? You don't enter map, you enter
address.
An address. And then you get?
The address and the link to the map.
Yeah, or sometimes even in the result set in the first page you have already a map, right? And then come other hits. So instead of giving a document and a link, you present it with graphical information as a result. Because if you enter an address, Google assumes that you have a geographic search intent and thinks, well, maybe a map is good for you. And same thing for famous people, you get what kind of result?
A list with pictures and some more information.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maybe on a movie, there are the actors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you enter a movie, you get this mixed result. They call it universal search, right? Where some images are given and some text links. Again, a mixture, you don't say, I want only images. The system assumes this could be a query where you might want images and text and gives you both. Or for other intents, other ideas, other things. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when you enter a book name, you get a link to Google Books.
Okay, also good example. Oh, they think, they notice that it's a named entity, the name of a book, right? Which for some books is not trivial, some book titles, and then say, maybe you want to read this book, we direct you to Google Books. Another search service could say, I direct you to Amazon or book.de, and maybe you want to buy this book. But that's another question, but they recognize, some different search representation, result representation might be necessary. Again, still we assume that there's static information and everything like that, right? We just have a different representation, not a list of documents. Other examples you had?
You can search for soccer results, for example, as well.
What do you enter then?
The both teams and maybe the date or something.
Okay.
Or just Hannover 96,
Yes.
Bayern Munich, result or something.
Exactly. You enter a name entity again. It recognizes it's the name of a soccer club and gives you the last result in the next game. That's what at least last year it was on this line. Google it worked like that. Again, nice result. It assumes, this person is maybe interested just in the fact of the result of the last game. He doesn't want to look through a document or anything, right? So I give him another representation.
Actually, other examples will be the weather.
Yes, weather very good.
The program takes or the website takes your location.
Yeah.
And I think a new thing is translation. So I think previously you had to go to the Google Translator or something like that, and now you can, for some words it works, or
Multilingual search.
things where he realizes you are looking for a translation.
Okay. You look for a translation of some text. Okay. Interesting
Or
result.
a phrase or something.
Multilingual search will be then a topic in the master one of the modules in the master. In case you're interested, will be based on this lecture with the multilingual information tree with topics like that. Right? What kind of services are available? How does that work? And how can we recognize languages? What problems are there with representation of different languages? But there another idea?
I actually observed this behavior while Googling for recent film names. They get an entry for a Wikipedia article where you would be able to look at the I don't know, what is it called, the cover of the movie and some additional information.
Again, a recognition of a named entity, and then you could be directed to some different sort of information. You also talked about movies, I think. What we could be directed to Wikipedia, to the actors page, to a list of actors, or to a review page where this film is reviewed, right? Things like that, which would not be on Wikipedia, which tries to be neutral and normal. But I think IMDb or something where review pages are also among the top results for a movie. I haven't tried it. A lot of interesting things. And actually, if there is a Wikipedia page for the text, for the thing you're looking for the type of query, for what you enter, there's, I think, a high probability now that there is a certain representation with the Wikipedia result on the right side, with some very structured information, which is for users who are looking for real information pieces, not a document, right? Want some, what is it called? Fact-finding, basically, you look for a fact. If you, for example, enter the name of a country, you will get some information on the result page already, number of inhabitants and things like that, population, without accessing the first hit. Okay, very good. But still, we assume, it's a static information need, and how can we model behavior better? How can we find everybody's looking for something different, everybody's behaving different, obviously, but how can we find patterns, and how can we describe this kind of behavior in a somewhat general manner? And in this regard, there has been a knowledge field information behavior. One of the typical terms that is often used is information seeking. Information seeking behavior is information behavior is a more general term. Information seeking behavior is behavior, how do humans behave when they search or seek information. Seeking is used just to distinguish this field from search, which could be even more narrow. Whereas information behavior is broader. What do I do with my results? How do I organize my hard drive? How do I organize information on different devices? Things like that. And seeking behavior really is concerned with how do people behave when they search for information. Different definitions, Gary Marconini, process in which humans purposefully engage in order to change the state of knowledge. Very general, right? I have a different state of knowledge. I know something, and there are a lot of things that I don't know. And I want to change this. I want to find out more, learn more about whatever, right? And for that, might use technology. I also might not use technology. I might ask somebody. So seeking behavior would also take into account different kinds of information sources. And it's of course an interesting research question. When do I type a query? When do I take the telephone and call somebody and ask him? And when do I pose a query on Facebook maybe and ask somebody virtually? Right? If we knew that, we would know a lot about information-seeking behavior. When do humans make a decision on what kind of sources to select? So source selection is one of the queries, one of the topics. Another topic would be, when do I start or initiate seeking behavior? When do I get the feeling that my state of knowledge is not sufficient, when I'm unsatisfied with that? When do I start? Why do I start? Donald Case says, a conscious effort to acquire information in response to a need or a gap in your knowledge. Again, I'm not satisfied with what I know. I notice, I should know something more to solve a problem or to work or to go on with my life or to solve some issues in my private life, to organize my spare time, my free time. I notice that I need to search for information. Courtau then says the process of construction with information seeking involves fitting information in with what one already knows and extending this knowledge to create new perspectives. So also acquiring things, learning things, and adding them into my mental model of whatever aspect is important. So, information-seeking process of finding information to fill a knowledge gap. I might need information for quite different purposes. We had some minor query purposes discussed before, for which search engines now already have a reaction. But there are, of course, more complex queries and more complex differences. Do I need information to make a decision about what medication to take? Or there's a lot of medical information needs nowadays on the internet, so people have information needs, they engage in information-seeking behavior, and they feel, I don't ask somebody, I don't go to the doctor, I pose a query on the web. So I might want a decision, should I go to the doctor? Or should I take some medicine that I have sitting at home? So quite relevant and health relevant needs that have to be resolved. Or do I have the need to learn about something? I prepare for the exam, I don't know a definition of a certain concept that was discussed in class, so I might engage in information-seeking behavior. I could use the slides that are provided to get the right information, or I might just enter something in Google and get some random information and maybe fail the exam because of it. I might have a question that I need to answer, simple question, or I might have whatever question, when is the next train. Need to increase my own knowledge about a certain subject. I want to learn about information retrieval, what can I do? And I need information to fill other needs like health problems, organizing my private life and things like that. So, information-seeking studies, what can they do? What factors, what variables are involved when people seek information? Or as Risevic, what is really going on when we go about finding information about something? And of course, again, we don't have to, everyday life, you engage in this kind of behavior all the time. We don't think about this. But as information professionals, you should think about this more. Especially when you're engaging in professional information search, information behavior in your professional life. Do I really look for the right, do I really use the right sources? Do I really search for enough relevant information? is there information about this topic? And we shouldn't give up very easily in case we search really professionally. And someday you will engage in this, of course. So we have to have some understanding of this from a theoretical point of view, and of course also for you once you're in the field. So there are many sub-questions. How do we behave depending on what kind of information we're looking for? Soccer results or travel information, we might behave differently. We might use more time or less time. How is it related to information searcher? Seeking is considered as a broader perspective, information behavior, information seeking behavior, information search as an error process. Yeah, there's an example here, people searching somewhere, in this case maybe even collectively. How can we find a model now to describe this kind of search in an old style archive, or how can we describe search in modern search engines? So information seeking models want to find commonalities across information seeking. What is common among many, many different actions that people take? All of you searched something last week, engaged in information seeking behavior. What was common for that? What was different? How can we find ways to talk about that? This, of course, depends on what a researcher wants to investigate. Therefore, there are many models. We'll just look at some of them. And this is how do people search for information in specific environments? How do they interact with retrieval systems? Do they pose one query or several? How are these queries connected? When do they stop? How do they decide that they have sufficient relevant information? All of this. And again, which sources do they use? Do they call somebody, ask somebody, post in a community or in a social network, or do they use the search engines? All of that could be described by information seeking. Okay, there are different models. One is by Javelin, for example, who says, there is many different things involved. We have our cognitive actor, the user, who is searching. Behind him there's a lot of context, organizational, social, cultural, temporal, we could also say, right? Typing or geographical context, as you said, depending on where I type a query, whether I might get a different result, whether I'm in Hamburg or wherever in Rome, I could get the weather for that location. So that could also be context. Of course, I have a lot of other things. I have social context, I know a lot of things, and there's organizational context. I'm within an organization or within a group of people. Maybe people search together. Collaborative search also interesting topic. Now this actor interacts with a interface. Behind this is the system, right? Just the interface, what he sees. On the whole slide, we don't see any really retrieval relevant issues like waiting and things like that. So it's a different perspective. We have our information system. Now that is the retrieval system, we could say. We do retrieval. And we have the information objects. Whatever websites maybe for web search or patents for patent search. And there are all kinds of interactions, right? The actor, for example, assumes he knows about objects, knows that there are patents, he knows that there are web pages, and he knows about different interfaces. He has assumptions on how does mobile search work, or how does search engine work, and a different kind of search engine, and when do I choose one of those. So a very general model that describes what kind of objects are involved in information seeking behavior. Actor with his context, the system, information objects, and an interface, which is in this case completely separated from the system. So here we can talk about, if we use this model, we can talk about search and seeking behavior now in terms of what objects are involved and how do they belong together. And this could differ for different search strategies, for different search intents. Wilson model is just a way of talking about the different disciplines that we could say are involved or how they related to each other. Tom Wilson said, well, information behavior is very general. It could involve things like my organization of my own knowledge, of my own systems. Where do I store my whatever paper results? How do I organize my archive? Things like that. There's information management of other things. Information seeking behavior. Now it's only that kind of information behavior that is involved in looking for new information. We could generally say we have 3 definitions a few slides back. And now in information seeking behavior I could do different things. I could basically ask others, right? Talk to people, and some information seeking behavior could be search, using search engines, different search systems. And that would be how information search behavior. He has also developed another model, Tom Wilson, in one, where he says we have again, how could we call this model different from Gervelin? It does not only involve the actors or the components of them involved in the process. It involves different kind of action, like information transfer, information use, seeking behavior. Information use is something I found something, document maybe. Now I'm doing something with it. For example, I found a good document on my topic. Now I include it in my presentation for a class. Right? That would be information use, doing something with this information. Then I look again for another definition. I find that document, add it into my presentation. I'm working with information or knowledge. Information transfer, we have also other people involved. Here we have different actors. Now we have the user with a need. We have the behavior. We have demands on information system and other systems. We can have failure and success, obviously. And we could end up with use and satisfaction or non-satisfaction. And be ready. Well, this is kind of a model that the elements are not so clearly defined, I think. There are some that are cognitive actors, like the user. Some are really phases here. Information use comes after search, right? But other people is not a phase in my project, so this is a little bit mixing things a bit, maybe. Wilson, again, several years later, he defined a problem-solving model that is goal-directed and based on a survey. A lot of his research in information-seeking behavior does use qualitative research methods like interviews and surveys. And here he found that users move. One thing that he found in common among many, many different behaviors is that people really move from a stage of uncertainty, where they're unsure about something, where they don't know something, to a stage where they know these things. So where they can really say, okay, now I have solved my problem, I can move on. And now there are several models that are basically phases that take a temporal aspect of modeling search behavior. Something that is common is a different phase. If I observe a lot of different searches and information seeking behaviors, I say, aha, in the beginning, I can always see a phase where people are initiate, that I can call initiation. Where people are unsure, this is a phase where I get aware of that I really have a search problem, that I have a knowledge problem. I should engage in something. So users become aware of the lack of knowledge or understanding. So this is a phase that we can always observe and where we don't know where nothing happens yet, we could say, right? Only in the head of the user, typically. Something that where search engines are not worried about, right? Second stage in Kuhtau's model and is the selection. The user needs to identify and select a general topic to be investigated, and also typically nowadays when we talk about selection, we also talk about selection of sources and systems, right? What kind of database do I search? Do I search the web? What kind of tools do I use? I use tools that I know, or other tools that might be better for this information need, things like that. Do we have the general? The next step is exploration. User needs to investigate information on a general topic in order to extend personal information. So I'm exploring things. This is a phase that is not always, might not occur in all the processes. We'll see that later. A very central phase that or stage that typically occurs is formulation. I type my query, I think of a query, I formulate my query. Here, the user enters what he wants. Right? This is the stage where search engines try to come in and support. So they could say, first two stages they don't really care about, but something happens in the behavior of the user that we could observe, but it is not modeled in retrieval systems. So I formulate a query. Collection phase. User needs to gather information. I find a few things. I collect them. Maybe only one sometimes, but often. Typically in informational needs, in ad hoc retrieval, we say, I want to find out things about the topic. I want to learn about weighting. Then I might collect different resources, different books or different web pages, and later look at some of them. So here I collect my relevant information. 6, which could be present or not, is what in the other model was called information use, is presentation. I do something with this, and in this Kuhtau, so-called this presentation, I present this information to somebody else, which is more a professional environment search. I have to find out things about the topic X and present to colleagues or something. Yes?
I didn't really get the exploration part.
Let's see other stages, and then we see also the temporal aspect. Then we come back to this, okay? I think it's easier to see this. Yeah, again, where is the thing? Here we have another model that was built on this. On Kuhtau's was Alice model in '89, and that is one that is very well known. It's almost in every application on information-seeking behavior. You see Wilson's 3 models, the 3 models that are based on each other, and the Alice model. Again, here we have a stage and a phase model that tries to say, typically there are these 4 or 5 stages that we can identify if we look at different search behaviors. Starting, training, browsing, differentiating, monitoring, extraction, verifying, and ending. And Wilson adopted this and said, there is a certain order, and sometimes the stages are a bit different. And here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 phases or stages that we say, if I look at behavior, I can find always a starting phase. It can take longer or shorter, but typically it's there. In the other model, this was called still, what's it called? Initiating phase, selection phase. Here the perspective is different, more general, starting, right? I'm aware, I should look up something, there's something I don't know, what could I do? And then we enter in different different ways to find the information. Here maybe we can also see what maybe exploration could be. What we don't have here is really the typing a query and looking at the results. We have browsing, chaining, monitoring, and the person says one of these should occur, maybe also two or maybe three, but typically one has to be there. Browsing would be following links, or browsing would be exploring topic, maybe by following links or by extending search behavior. Chaining would be following links, maybe after a search, after entering a search, or by starting at some information need, starting at some source. For example, I want to find out what is happening with the crisis in Greece. I might not type in a query. I could also go to a typical online journal because I know there will be an article every day, and then I could follow some links and go back and forth, and that could be called chaining. I could also explore links and follow links to more general topics. That would be browsing. Monitoring is a different kind of behavior that has not been in the other behavior models. What kind of behavior could be monitoring? It's kind of a reoccurring information behavior. I'm interested in the results of a soccer team, but they play every week. I have to redo this. I have to chain, what is it called, monitor. What are their results every week? Or what is the table or the standings for the teams in the Bundesliga? I will look up at every week when I have time.
Those football live tickers, the good example for monitoring?
Also a good example, exactly. I'm interested, what is the score right now, right? I want to see immediately if something happens in the game. So I monitor the game by a live ticker. Another example would be stock markets, right? I want to know how much money do I have now, how are my stocks going. I could look every day or every second if I'm a really professional trader.
Isn't it more that I want to be informed immediately? That I don't have to look it up by myself, but I want to be informed by it. Isn't that also monitoring?
That means I don't want to be active. I want to get an SMS whenever there's a goal or something. Yeah, or I want to be informed when my stocks go beyond a certain threshold, or when my eBay things are sold. All of that would be monitoring, but some would be by push and some by pull services. This is not differentiated. All right, Alice would say, yes, that's all one type of behavior, but there are at least two technical ways to do that. To solve this, I could look up every minute myself, or maybe I have services that send things to me actively that I configured at some point in time. Both would be monitoring. So reoccurring information needs that I have to solve several times or once in a while, maybe once in a week when I'm interested in soccer or things like that. Okay, and the rest, all the other phases, differentiating, extracting, verifying, ending, happen after I did my search, after I engaged in search behavior. Now there's a very fine model of what happens afterwards, not only information used, but differently scheduled. I end somewhere, differentiating, maybe I found different results, maybe there are two tickers, right? Maybe there are several papers explaining weighting in information retrieval, so I could differentiate. I have a result list, I select a few, that is differentiating behavior. I have a lot of links that follow my online, if I find I'm interested in the Greece crisis, the crisis in Greece, I might follow, go to a list of links, and then I select a few and others I don't select. It's also differentiating based on whatever criteria. Maybe language or layout, it could be anything, right, that I differentiate. Typically I would differentiate for relevance, of course, right? Or I might think, this ticker is for some technical reasons better, it's quicker or more accurate or something like that, right? Quicker. Again, a lot of different things that I could do, but they're all called differentiating. that way we manage to get a lot of different information behavior into one model. Next is extracting, and that is already working with the results that I have. I have a result, standings of the Bundesliga, and then extracting is I look for where is my team or where are the teams that I'm interested in. I'm extracting some information from documents that I get. Verifying is a phase that might not always occur. I'm checking with other resources or with other knowledge. Could this be really true? Do I have different results? There are different books maybe on weighting. Well, which one is really right? Which is it TF or is it log TF? What is the best result? So verifying. Might not happen if I'm not so critical, but especially for professional search, that should be included. Then ending means, okay, kind of, now I know, I'm ready, I'm done, I decide to stop. I have verified my results. Of course, if I verify and I come to the conclusion, that's kind of dubious, might not be the real information, then I could go back to another phase. I could go back, it's not true, I could go back and extract other information, I could go back and differentiate again and say, aren't there better hits in my result list, or aren't there better links that I can follow? Or I could even go back and say, let's try other query terms, or let's look for another link page, another hub that I could look at. So there can be jumps back and forth within these different phases and stages that can reoccur. Okay? So Alice Wilson's process model, quite important. Now let's come back to exploration, right? Here we see exploration. User needs to investigate information on a general topic in order to extend personal understanding. Very general. What does it really mean? My opinion, it's a bit related to the browsing. It's a more open search behavior. I'm not so sure. It's not so formally, clearly directed. Search behavior that is related to querying and typing in a query, which is called here formulation, we could say. For such an information, I need to have some understanding of what I'm looking for. But sometimes there are information needs where I'm very unsure. I'm not sure. How is it called? How could I start? Then I might use exploration and browsing techniques, right? We will have later, again, some slides on directed information needs and open directed information needs. We'll see that. Okay? So, another model that is Marconini's seeking behavior, and this basically now if you know Alice or Wilson's processes, it's sufficient. You don't have to learn all the different models now. Just what I want to illustrate is something that we already talked about, that their phases can reoccur and there are connections between phases. In Marconini's model, he explicitly drew a line and a pointer when he thinks that something can reiterate. Here's a bit more basic. Recognize, accept the information need, define my problem, select sources, formulate query. He doesn't include browsing and monitoring. He just includes querying. Execute, examine results. We had a verifying in the other model. Kind of correlates. What is that? Extract information, extraction, and reflection, stop. That was the ending phase in Wilson's model. Right? But the interesting thing, as I said, don't have to memorize these. There can be things where I go back. For example, I formulate my query. I might say, how is it really called? And then I come to thinking again about my problem. Do I really have to search for that? Or should I search for something else really? to better understand what I need to search for. For example, in a medical information need, I might ask completely irrelevant questions and come to other results. And here is default transitions, high probability and low probability transitions. Default is that I go forward, but I have high and default, even default phases where I go back. For example, examine my results. I say, okay, I might execute another query, or I might even select a different source because I'm not satisfied with the results that I got. Okay. But these are the phases that you should really memorize or know about, whereas the others are just to illustrate that there are different ways to formulate that and that there can be connections between them. Kotau also very interestingly said, okay, this is very nice, but let's consider also the user and bring him into these phases. And we said, there's a move from uncertainty to hopefully certainty if we are successful. And this is our feelings, thoughts, cognitive aspects, and physical actions involved. So the user is not only somebody who clicks the button, he also thinks about things and has feelings, feels whatever. Well, what do people feel when they search for information? A lot of different things could happen, of course. Wolfgang has a PhD, Frau Irle works on this topic. What are emotions involved in information search? And Kotau says, in the beginning, I'm uncertain. Might be anxious or unsure about my problems. In the exploration phase, I could experience some very negative feelings. For example, what does he say? Confusion, frustration, doubt. I don't get anything. I ask the wrong queries. I might get confused. Or I might say, I don't find anything. Maybe I stop because of frustration. And if I move to hopefully iteratively improve my query, go to better results, and finally maybe I'm successful, feel I'm successful, I might have a sense of accomplishment or satisfaction. What is satisfaction in case I'm not successful? So there could be different emotions. My thoughts could be first very vague. I'm not sure, what do I search for? I get more and more focused, and I might get more and more sure about my behavior, my query and my behavior. I might get the feeling I'm on the right track. Okay, and physical actions we've talked about. So here the model, basically the same model, is just augmented with the feelings and thoughts that the user has, okay, which is not included here. But of course we can, all of us, if we had some similar experience, we can easily associate different feelings with these phases. I've several times already talked about the iterative nature of the search process. Marisevich verifies this here very nicely with an iterative search process, meaning typically I make several steps and change my query because I have more knowledge from the first intermediate results. So we have a search task. We interact with the system. We open the system, call Google maybe. I have an initial query formulation. I get feedback. I see some results and say, that's not what I'm looking for. Let's change my query. Or, I typed something wrong. Or this is not really the name. How it's called officially. Let's think about synonym. Right? Then I move. I evaluate resources and make decisions about reformulating my query and hopefully end up with a better query. So my expertise changes in the query process. Right? Once I get results back, I'm in a way a different person. I know more. cannot be compared to the person that I was before that search. I had another state of knowledge. So I'm constantly evolving to something the system could also take into account. User-oriented research, a lot of research question, of course. What kind of user aspects determine the kind of information we need? What individual differences, based maybe on characters or professionalism, or do I search for professional task or non-professional task? What is my domain knowledge? Am I an expert in the field or not? What is my search expertise? Am I an information professional who knows a lot about search and search engines, like you? Or is it just normal people who have no knowledge about how does a search engine work? Have just some mental model, maybe, how it works, that might be wrong or not, and they might behave differently. What kind of relevance criteria do I have? When am I satisfied with something, when am I not satisfied? Quite important, right? When do people stop? When do they think this is a relevant document? And we know from evaluations, we start to talk about evaluation next week, that people have very different opinions about relevance. Somebody might say, with the same query, this is relevant. Somebody else might say, this is not relevant for me. And why is that the case? What is involved? What is there about the document? What are the features of a document that one user says yes, and the other says, no, I will look for something else. So also this slide also says, a lot of things happen in the user, so IR can be also considered to be a problem-solving process, which could be, well, dealt with methods from cognitive psychology. For example, criteria for relevance could be, of course, the content of the document. That's basically the only thing we think about so far when we talk about retrieval. We want to have relevant documents. Relevance is only determined basically by the words that are in the document. Word counting, linking, maybe in web search, we have the page rank algorithm, but nothing else. I have a lot of different, when the user encounters the document, there's a lot of different things that are important. For example, previous experience. Type in the query, get a good result. Google thinks this is the highest, or the search engine thinks this is the best hit for your query. And you could say, based on your previous experience, doesn't help me. For example, which factors could determine that to say, doesn't help me?
Maybe if you're looking for a certain theory or concept and your knowledge isn't that good and you get something highly technical or mathematical kind of information and you can't really use that because you don't understand it. Might be perfect, but you don't understand it. So.
Exactly. Might be a perfect hit. Most people, experts would say, that's it. Read it. And it's about, I don't have the basic knowledge to access it. My expertise is not sufficient. Right? Good example. I can even understand most of the terms that are in this document. For me, it's not irrelevant.
Well, if you look for something that, when you have two topics that have the same name and Google only finds one relevant, and you look at 30 different pages and you still haven't found the right result you wanted, and you can't think of another query.
Ambiguity problems, that there is a word like bank, right, it's ambiguous, and I might not find my right. Well, in this case, I could say, it's ambiguous. I forgot that there's also the other bank because I'm now thinking only of financial bank. I add something like money or the financial. That would be a typical psycho-interactive process, but I might not really know about it, and I might have problems, right? Okay.
It's also very often the case that you look for some kind of error, for example, you use a program and an error occurs, and then you try to look up the solution for this error, and all you find is exactly the same error message. Somebody else has already written and asked for help, but you don't find the solution, just the entry for another guy asking the same question.
That's a very interesting problem. Yeah, very interesting problem that also has there are very similar issues. That I'm interested in the solution, but I can only pose a very bad query because I'm completely unsure what is happening in the whatever Java or so. All I can do is copy the error message. And if it's a common error message that a lot of beginners might have, they all have posted it somewhere, and they'll find a lot of topics where the same text occurs, but I'm not interested in this text, I'm interested in solutions. And what do I have to type to find a solution? Very good example. It's there for a very anomalous state of knowledge that is very vague. I don't know what is happening. My expertise is not very high maybe. And I get documents that are technically speaking a perfect match, but don't contain the result. Another similar example, that's not as nice, is looking for addresses. I might look for the address of a church or a university. I type in address, University of Hildesheim. Basically, I don't want a document that has the word address. I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for whatever is close to address. I'm looking for something that formally looks like an address. It has a street name, a zip code, street, a house number, and a town name in Germany, different cultures. I'm actually looking for this pattern. I'm not looking for the word address. Somebody has typed in a query, what is the address of the University of Hildesheim in a help forum? I might get a perfect hit from a technical point of view, search engine point of view. Right? But this example is even nicer with the error code of in programming. Other factors. Looking for a textbook now to study for information retrieval, maybe for the exam that will be in 2 weeks, wasn't that? And now you get a nice, isn't it? 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Really? We have 2 more topics. 2 more weeks to today. Yeah, and then we do it in the 3rd week, on the 20-something, right? Or 19? 20th of July, which is in 3 weeks. That sounds good. Oh, okay. Relax. So you're looking for the exam in 3 weeks, then you have some time to read the textbook, an introduction to information retrieval. And now you find a very nice one on the first spot in your result. And what could be a reason? And you say, doesn't help. For me, completely irrelevant. But maybe not for your neighbor. Because, finally, now I can study for the exam, right? I already gave you some good hits, so you don't have to search, but just imagine professor doesn't provide you with information.
Maybe the language?
Language, could be, language issues, exactly. Might be a good book in Spanish and somebody can't read Spanish, right? Somebody feels uncomfortable reading long text in English. And is looking for a German version. Perfect. Other reason. Even nothing elaborated. Very simple reasons. That you find it useful and you don't.
Maybe it's for advanced readers or some who have some previous knowledge in this specific topic.
Oh, very similar like this answer. Like you said, all your expertise might be relevant. But let's one step further. Maybe somebody has already read the book. Who knows it already? A person has read it, reread, right? And you both get the same result. For you it's useful, for you it's not useful. It's a perfect hit, and you might say, okay, I understand that it's here, but for me, garbage. Right? Doesn't help me. So my previous experience, how much do I know? Have I read this book? Which documents? Everybody has read some documents. some of them are, if those again appear in as hits, they're typically not helpful. With one exception, if I'm doing refinding pages that I've already found earlier, different kind of behavior, refinding information. There was one page that I had or one useful book, and I want to look at it again. Maybe then I need it. So it depends completely on what is happening in my head, if a document is relevant or not. Different kind of behavior. Attitudes and preferences. Preferences with language would be a good example for preferences, attitudes, how much time, how long should the book be, what do I want? Do I want a book with exercises, without, things like that. Preferences, individual preferences. The source of the document could also play a big role. Is it from a reliable host? Who has published this? Right? It's the university. It's a university page, but it's a student who wrote it. Right? This is the company talking about their own products. So the source and the author could be really important factors for someone, and somebody might have a different opinion about that. So again, different people could decide differently. Situation, or context. We could also say context of users. What kind of context could be relevant? For example, time. Imagine you're on a cell phone and you type in restaurant. Then we have geographical context, but also
Definition of restaurant.
Okay, definition of restaurant. My income would play a role, because I might not be interested in some whatever. Street food, I want to sit down and I want to accept only restaurants where I can drink wine or something, and somebody else might be interested in fast food. Exactly. So my social situation plays a role in the evaluation. My location plays a role. Might find a restaurant close. And what about temporal aspects?
I found a book, but it's not in the library, so I have to wait for it.
Okay.
I don't have time to wait for it.
That is availability or source of document as a physical unit. Can I access it really? Or is it a library, I cannot get it because it's somebody else has it, or I have to pay for information, right? For professional information. Of course, good high quality information is not always without a cost. So do I want to pay for it, right, or not? That's it again. But the restaurant example, the temporal aspect in the restaurant example, very trivial again.
Might be closed.
Okay. Well, it might be closed. The content might be a perfect hit. The restaurant is right there. I can already see it, but it's closed. Oh, that's a good example. And if I type this in the morning and in the afternoon, or in the evening, well, so trivial. Nobody wants to say. I'm looking for a restaurant that offers breakfast. In another case, if I type this in the evening, I might not be interested in the restaurant that offers only breakfast. Right? So the time could be crucial for my judgment of the results, all including my situation. And of course, we have fuzzy variables here that interact, right? Remember fuzziness? I have a social status. I want to have I want to have better food. But then my situation could be that I'm very hungry already. Then I would say, okay, I accept the street food or fast food as well. So complex things are happening in the head, and not very much of that is modeled, of course, in information retrieval systems. More on user differences. I think we had all of that. Motivation. Is this really, I'm really motivated, or is this just a task that I have to do for class? Or somebody else asked me to do this for him? Am I really motivated? Am I sick and looking for health information? I could be highly motivated. My verifying stage and extraction stage, and could be much longer because I'm looking at many, many more documents. I really want to find out, can I take this medicine? or will it kill me over time? And that would also, context also determines the resources. Do I have time for this? Or should I take it now? The medicine, whatever. Or in professional context, how much time can I really dedicate to a search? How much time did my employer dedicate, did he provide for me for this search? What can I do? Are systems available, right? As you said, did the information, am I close to the library at all, right? Can I go there? Or can I only have an e-book right now, right? I'm on a train and I want to read about IR for 10 minutes. I could look into an e-book, right, in the library. Social situation, environments, things like that. Systems available. Did my company have an access to whatever professional information provider? Or am I limited and can only search on the web? So, all of that are things that influence the information behavior. Another thing, personality. Personality factors, there's a lot of different models in psychology, of course. We don't do research on that, even teach about personality differences. But one model that a lot of people use is the Big Five model. It has 5 different dimensions of personalities: openness, consciousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Okay, and you can be either on a high or a low scale for either of that dimensions, and that defines an individual personality. Very coarse model. There are others, of course. But for example, this has been used in a study by Jannika Heinström, who said she said in interviews she found out there are 3 different types of searching behaviors, or different search behaviors by different personalities. Fast surfers, people who are perceived have little time, dedicate little time, they have a high time pressure, or at least a perceived time pressure, they think they have little time, want to dedicate little time. They could have problems with relevant judgments because they don't invest in much. Deep divers is a group that, she says, goes for depth, for investing a lot of in analysis and good queries, and look at a lot of results and quality. And broad scanners, a group that is open for new information, that maybe doesn't stop at the boundaries. This is already beyond my scope of my search. This is also interesting. It might get even carried away by looking at things that are only little related. Okay. Questions? By the way, Jannika Heinström will visit us probably in October and give a talk also, so you can, maybe she talks about these things, we'll find out. So keep posted, we'll announce it, of course, on the blog and maybe also on the mailing list. Again, another issue is the generation. A lot of people write now about the generation of digital natives who have different kind of information behavior. People who grew up with digital information always being available during their lifetimes. And these people might seek information in new ways and have different approaches to IT, no barriers, right? They might willingly adopt new ICT. Again, something that you can think about. Another interesting issue for those who study also cultural, class and cultural studies, they might have heard about cultural differences, hopefully have heard about that, and that's also influences search behavior. For example, there's a study by what's her name? Kralisch and Behrendt. They both looked at Asian and Western cultures and said, we have short-term and long-term orientation. Are we willing to invest a lot now to have return in the long end? Or do we want quick return for our investment in probably time and effort, but very quickly? And they proved with a log file study that there's a preference for browsing as opposed to keyword searching in long-term oriented cultures, because browsing involves reading more text, learning about the structure of a domain, browsing through a thesaurus, for example, to a knowledge structure. I will read other things that I'm not interested in, whereas if I'm short-term oriented, I have a higher preference to use keyword search, enter a term, and get immediate results. Back. 3:30. Okay, then we move on. Other models, for example, Bates, what's the name? Marcia Bates. Berry picking model, move across sources, people to go along certain paths and pick new ideas, also very influential, but we go through that quickly. And this was one of the models where she proved that search is really evolving, that people change their goals, their strategies over time, and that we have a nonlinear and dynamic process. We don't start with one intent and end up with one result. Things change over time during the search stages. Okay, a kind of illustration of search behavior. How does that now go along with the information retrieval? How can we bring information retrieval and information search behavior together? Remember Wilson's model with 6 phases from starting to ending, something which is worthwhile remembering. On the other hand, we have information retrieval models. And Gallervo-Jerveling brought this together in this nice picture. He says, okay, there is a core that we call IR, the dark blue or the darkest blue. There we can see, that looks basically like the models that we've talked about so far in retrieval. We have documents, indexing, query, and a match. And that is the IR context. We can evaluate that based on recall, precision, things we'll study next week, but you have some general idea from that, from the introduction. But there is also a broader context that would be the information-seeking context, which now brings in more the human perspective, seeking process, seeking tasks, seeking results. And he said that could be evaluated based on other criteria. We cannot evaluate the success of information-seeking behavior. It's very individual, different, and so forth, based on recall and precision. That's difficult. We can maybe judge it in terms of usability. How usable is the information? How usable is the system overall? Because when I'm using a real system, the quality of the result, the usability, all that is for the user one thing, and we can only evaluate it as a whole, as one really black box. Also the quality of the full information process. How do I evaluate it? I can't use very detailed technical models. I have to be more. Then he says there is a general context, the work process. As he says, well, we don't search just for fun. There is something, work task, or maybe also a leisure task, my spare time, that I want to get done. Right? I want to do something. And this also has to be considered. For example, determines resources that are available and stuff like that, professionalism, things that we have talked about in the last slides. This is the work process. So the work context is also important. Now if I get good search results, I might be able to work better. But how does really the work with quality, how is that related to the search quality? If I have a good retrieval system, do I automatically have a better search experience? Do I automatically get better searches, work results? Probably not. So again, different things coming together. And then, of course, the bigger picture, socio-cognitive relevance, the social and cultural, organizational and cultural context, he calls it, really, in what environment am I? How is my social environment? That determines how my work has to be done, hierarchical, non-hierarchical. Are resources available? Can I decide on things, or is that all given by the social context, and so forth? All that determines my seeking process. That determines how do I use in the end the search engine. So this is, again, I think a nice picture which brings together the IR models and the seeking models. Okay? So I think time moves quickly, I think, right? We're almost to the end. Thought I could start with evaluation already today, but it doesn't look like it. Class differences. Okay, we have to skip that. Let's just one brief word so you understand ecological models like the information foraging models. Foraging means a living being, animal, or human is searching for food to fulfill his basic requirements to be satisfied, to be hungry or thirsty. And there are different kinds of behaviors to find different food, right? For animal, for example, do I look for something green that I can eat that is close? Should I maybe have some green grass around, but not so much? Do I prefer to go away to take a longer stroll to maybe find some better food, some more grass? To already see some very green grass far away, and I take the effort to walk there to get this. This is foraging, and Piroli et al. And Kai, they developed the information foraging model, which is now the name of Autumn School. And here we have they try to describe human information behavior in terms of this ecological concept. Basically, humans, when they look for information, they behave more or less like animals who search for food. They interpret signs of nutrition or signs of food quality or signs of rich information. Explore, they take very often follow the principle of the least effort. How can I invest little and get a good result, which ecologically makes sense to survive and get sufficient food. So evaluate opportunities. Should I follow a link or not? They say can be described in terms of the ecological model of the foraging. Okay, here we have other. Again, we come back to this Alice model. We have different browsing stuff. That's also not so relevant. And the rest is trying to relate this to log file analysis that we had last week. So again, just to sum up, remember this here, that could be very interesting. How is seeking behavior related to IR models? And of all the models that we've discussed, you should know something about criteria of relevance. What is really seeking behavior? What does it mean? And of all the models, you should be familiar with this one. Okay? Let's agree on the Wilson's process model. And the other ones we just discussed to put this into context. But this is a model that we say, this is really 6 stages and is quite useful for most cases. Okay, questions? Not the case? So we have 2 more sessions, one on evaluation, one on optimization, right? Still a few things to study for the exam. Homework, did we have 6 already? 7th is missing, right? It comes with evaluation. We have the 7th homework. Then everybody should be able to pass 5 homeworks. No more questions then? Thank you and see you next week.